and this is going to sound weird at first, but can you imagine how boring it would be if everything that we tried to do like worked in this exact way that we thought it would? Like you would get to the part where you would run out of things to like do because you're doing everything, and then you lose the appreciation of something really working and something not working.
All right, well, man, I'm excited. We got, a legend, a true legend, innovator in so many ways, as a producer, as an entrepreneur, as a producer entrepreneur. Illmind, thank you so much for hopping on. Appreciate you.
Yeah, of course, man. Shout to Gabe, shout to Legion, the whole team, Midi Money. You already know, man. I'm happy to be here, dude.
Right on, man. So, man, I know you got a lot of cool stuff going on as always, but maybe we can just start a little bit of the backstory, and then I definitely want to get to what we got going on now. Yeah, man, what kind of first got you into producing? I know you came from a musical family, right? Is that what kind of got you into it?
Yeah, music has just always been surrounding the house. Like it's been in my household since I remember having memories. So my dad played guitar, and his brothers, I had like two or three uncles that used to always come over to the house, and they all played instruments. So every weekend they'd come over to the house, and my dad would be on guitar. I'd have another uncle playing drums, another uncle on vocals, and like they would just jam out. I just remember it being like a big part of my life, and I didn't realize until I got older like how kind of like not super normal that is. Like just having all of your relatives like come to the house and just like play music all day every day, and like that became a norm to me. And then when I got older and I fell in love with like hip hop specifically, I started to become curious about the process of creating music, and just like being curious and saying, damn, like who's putting these beats together? Like how does that work? Like are like the beats we're listening to, are they like live bands? Like are they bands coming together and making it? Or like what's sampling and what's an MPC and what's you know how are they doing this? So as a kid, I became super curious about it, and then I just kind of one day I just dove in and I started messing around, and it started with me emulating the people that I looked up to, and from there, turned from a curiosity to a hobby, and then eventually a career. So. It's funny because even after all these years, I still feel like that same kid who's just like super curious about how it all works. And I think that's what like kind of keeps me going.
Yeah, no, that's that curiosity I think is so important. Where if you lose that, it's kind of like, well, then what are you doing? You're not innovating anymore, not having fun anymore. It's all about that. And I do remember like the first beats I made, it was like magic. I was like, wait a second, this it, it wasn't good. It was garbage, but I was like, this is music. I just made this. Like, so I think if you start to lose that, then you kind of lose the whole reason you started in the first place. What did you make your first beat on? Do you remember? Do you know?
The very first beat that I ever made on was from my dad's keyboard that I definitely wasn't allowed to use, but I like snuck when he wasn't home. Like I used to sneak in and like use it, but it was this like big like Roland. I think it was Roland KR 4500 like stage keyboard, and it had MIDI capabilities. It had its own like internal instruments, and I wasn't sampling or anything on it, but I was just like basically like composing melodies and putting beats together. I didn't know what I was doing either. So that was technically like the first piece of equipment, but the first like legit piece of equipment that I used was actually two things. It was a PC with Cubase, and then I somehow managed to route the MIDI out of the PC from Cubase to trigger an Akai S20, which is basically like the poor man's MPC, because I definitely was super broke and had no money back then. So I remember getting this like little beat machine on eBay, uh, the Akai S20, and I would use that to trigger my sound. So that was like my first setup, and then from there it grew to MTV Music Generator, which was like That in fact, MTV Music Generator for PlayStation came like the same year. So I was doing a lot of beats on Music Generator, and then from there it evolved.
Nice, nice. And then so then what was the process from there? So it was making beats, you started connecting with some artists. How did that kind of evolve?
Yeah, early on for me, it was the era of like right before like the social media stuff started to happen. So when I was really in that world, it was a lot of like, you make beats and you go on like producer forums, music forums. So like okplayer.com, undergroundhiphop.com, some of the other forums. And that was kind of like my world where it was make beats and then like upload them in really like shitty quality to these forums, but then connect with other people through these forums. And it's funny because that was so long ago, but that's pretty similar to what we're doing right now as musicians on social media. So technically I was kind of doing the same thing, but on a smaller scale. So that was my world. It was make beats, share on the internet, and then eventually that turned into meeting some rappers and some artists on the internet, and then doing my little $50 per beat thing and doing that whole thing. And it was combined with also meeting people in person. So I used to go to like shows and stuff and try to network with artists that I could like work with. But back then it was funny because back then I wasn't really thinking too much about like selling beats or the business of anything. It was I was just kind of like gung ho with it, where it was just like, oh shit, you like my beats? Well, like I don't care if you suck, just like put your voice on this so I can like see what my beats sound like as like a real song. So it was for me early on. It was a lot of just like gung ho, a lot of excitement, not really focusing on too many things. More so, just like I just want to make music and work with people and see where it goes.
Nice, nice. And then it ended up going somewhere, pretty good, I would say. So then how did you get from there to, now you've got the J. Cole's and the Drakes and Jay-Z and all that kind of craziness. What was that? How'd you get to there?
Yeah, it was a long road, man, and it's I'm still on that road, like
Sure.
there's this perspective of people looking at my career and saying, "Oh wow, like Illmind has been through so much." And then my perspective is, yeah, for sure, and I'm thankful for it, and I've grown so much, but I still feel like I'm just getting started, like even after having accomplished what I have already, I still feel like every day I wake up and I do this, it's still like day one, like no Grammys, no plaques, no accolades, zero followers on social media. Like, how can I use the next 24 hours to build myself up and go further along than I was yesterday. And that's how I've kind of been treating every day for a lot of years now. And so that's kind of where my head is at now is you know, not like super overthinking any of it and really more so just like living in the moment in a way where I'm thankful for the stuff I've done, but I'm still sort of wanting to do so much more.
That's awesome. I feel like that's like the hunger, right? Of wanting to always do that next level, always that next step, always not getting too much like, oh, I did this thing, I'm just gonna bask in that. But no, I want to do that next thing combined with what you said earlier about that curiosity. I think those two together is like the combo, right?
Dude, 1,000,000%. Like going from, Cubase on a PC with like the poor man's MPC to, like you said, records with like Drake and J. Cole and Kendrick and all these guys. Like when you look at the entire in between of how I got from point A to point Z, um, for me, if I analyze my story, I see it in parts, right? There's like these micro sort of like moments of history, and some of those micro kind of ecosystems were like 2 years, and then like this 3 year time span is when I did X, Y, and Z, which led me to the next 2 years, and so on. And having done this since 2004, like 2004 2005 was when I went like, okay, this is fully going for it, like no turning back. So you're talking, 15 to 18 years. I went through these kind of like micro phases where, phase number one for me was, emulate the producers I loved, try to get people to rap on my shit and sing on my shit, and not really focusing on money too much. Uh, which is, when I look back at it, like probably wasn't the best thing, but in doing that, it led me to the next phase, which was, oh wow, like I'm starting to work with these bigger artists. Like Little Brother back then was like a huge deal to work with because they were like the antithesis of popular rap music at the time. Like at the time, it was 50 Cent, street music, Eminem, Dre. If you're watching this and you remember that era, it was very much that. And it was the beginning stages of like Kanye West backpack rap. So you had this group, Little Brother from North Carolina, come along and shake it up. And I had um, I had the pleasure of sort of semi being involved with that and having the honor of producing some records with them, and that kind of helped my name move forward as well. And then that moved to working with G Unit finally, and getting my like real true like big break, I guess my first big break. And
Right.
so again, not to be too long-winded, but it was a series of like moments. Like I call them um, like turning points, right? Like working with Little Brother was a turning point. That was a phase, and then I went into the G Unit, Shell Money Excel, 50 Cent phase, and then when I exited that phase, I was doing. I started doing like podcast and drum kits, and that was the beginning phase of that, which was like 2010, 2011, and then 2012 worked with Kanye, right?
Mm.
And that exploded the opportunity and the door for me. Uh, and then 2014, J. Cole, Forest Hills Drive, 2015, Drake, and then now the snowball is getting crazy and crazy and crazy. But I never would have gained access to that part of my career if it wasn't for phase one, phase two, phase three. So again,
Right.
like it moves in waves, it moves in phases, and that's what I think is so fascinating about this stuff.
Yeah, that's the fun part about I feel like this job of being a music producer because it can be different every day, every year. Like you said, there's these different phases, but even throughout the day, it's like we're on here doing a podcast now. Later I'll be doing, whatever. I'm working on this launch. I know you got a course coming up, and you're working on that, and you're going to be on Twitch, and we get to do all these different things throughout the day, throughout these different phases that I think is really it can be overwhelming and also is like just so fun. It's part of the thing of what we get to do is all this different cool stuff.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine all the different hats that you're wearing too. It's like that's kind of the new, not, I wouldn't even really say new, but that is the model for being a
Yeah.
music producer in 2021, moving forward. And it's interesting because like you mentioned being overwhelmed, and 1 million percent it's so easy to be overwhelmed by this stuff. But I want to touch on that and say that what's helped me with being overwhelmed by this stuff is the moment that I dropped the expectation of having to perform, in this like perfect sort of unrealistic way in everything that I'm doing. As soon as I alleviated myself of that pressure and gave myself permission to not be so perfect, is when I was really able to kind of like handle all of these different components that I'm kind of seemingly juggling at the same time. But when you approach it in that way, and you add this, and I'm sure you could relate to this, but when you add this component of joy to everything that you're doing, then like it none of this stuff feels like actual work.
Yeah.
And I think that's what allows for us to perform at the highest level. Like this interview that we're doing, I know it's going to be like super valuable for people, and it's like super dope to know that it is. But like me and you are just having a conversation. Like, this is a fun conversation. Like, there's nothing about this that like feels like work,
Right.
but technically we are working. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that's the beauty of this shit.
I love it. I love it. It's that joy. And the other thing that really helps for me as far as taking some of that pressure off is having that kind of mindset of everything's an experiment. You know, like, oh, I'm
Yes.
doing this big launch and it feels like if this thing goes well, it could be the thing that changes my life. And if it goes poorly, it feels like it's going to be the end of my world. Whether if either of those are true or not, sometimes it feels that way. Sometimes if I can shift my mindset to, you know what, it's an experiment. I'm going to put this thing out there. I'm going to try to do a podcast. I'm going to try to launch this thing. I'm going to try to make this beat, whatever it is. And I'm going to experiment and I'm going to learn. Either it's going to suck or it's going to be great or it's not. But either way, I'm just going to learn and do the next. That's been huge for me as far as that mindset shift. Cause I'm somebody who I get anxious. I psych myself out all the time. I feel overwhelmed, but that's been a big little hack there of just like, you know what, it's an experiment. We'll see. We'll have fun. We'll just see what happens. And if it tanks, cool. Well, then I learned something.
Exactly. Can you imagine how boring the world would be or our lives would be if, and this is going to sound weird at first, but can you imagine how boring it would be if everything that we tried to do like worked in this exact way that we thought it would? Like, you would get to the point where you would run out of things to like do because you're doing everything, and then you lose the appreciation of something really working and something not working. Right? I think that's
Dude,
so interesting, dude. Like,
that
we
is
need those failures, man. We need them.
that's such an interesting way to put it because
It's
it
like
just
how,
you
sorry to cut you off, but just to add
no,
to it,
yeah.
it's like how boring would it, I know this sounds like kind of like this might come off a little D-bag-ish, but like a Grammy wouldn't be as special if I just told myself, "Hey, like this song's gonna get a Grammy," and then it like 100% does. Now, like 2 years later, I have 100 Grammys. It's like then you get to that tipping point where it's like, well, what's special anymore,
Yeah.
right? So
No, it's funny, like, I feel like that just you just changed something in my brain where it sounds so obvious, but it's the trying and failing, it's the difficulty of it that makes it fun, and so if you just take it to that extreme of, well, okay, what happened if you take that out? Like, if that's what, like, you think you want, but it's like, "No, wait a second, I don't actually want that." That's the struggle is the fun part, the struggle is what makes it worth it, so that's really cool how you put it that way. I never, like, quite put it that way of like, you know what? Actually, I'm really grateful for the struggle because that's what makes it all worth it in the end. That's really dope. I like that.
absolutely, man. I am a big, obviously all of us love Bruce Lee, but that one quote that he said many, many decades ago, where he said, move like water, right? He's referencing water to everything that he did in his life. And that's sort of his like mantra. And when I think about waves and I think about water and I think about, all these people that say we'll keep it in the music producer world where, placements come in waves or money that comes in waves, right? Which is 100% true. And I'm thinking about it and I'm like, okay, well, that's very similar to what we just talked about, which is some things we do work and some things we do won't work, right? Which is a wave, some shit's up, some shit is down. And and then I started to dig a little deeper and I'm like, well, that's how music is. Music wouldn't be music if it wasn't for um, the the variation in sound and also the space between the notes, right? So then I'm thinking, okay, well, Quincy Jones said that silence is music, right? Which I think he got that from Claude Debussy, I think, this composer centuries ago. But then I'm like, okay, well, that's how life is, right? Like, our failures are the equivalent to the spaces between the notes. And so without those spaces between those notes, there is no music. So you need those spaces. You need those time periods where stuff doesn't work, or maybe you go 6 months, a year, 2 years with no placements, and you're kind of like on this low part of the wave. But you need that in order to go this way and to get that dub. Otherwise, if you're up here, then there is no life really, right, without the downs as well. So when I started to really approach my philosophy and just everything that I do in that way, where I give myself permission, like you said, you know, this thing that I tried that didn't work, that's that's my space between the next, note that I'm about to play. And
Yeah.
and when I look at it that way, I feel a lot better about it.
Right. No, I
Yeah.
love it. I mean, that the snare hitting feels so good because of the tension that that kick created in time before it, right? It's
Tension,
like
that's the word, dude. Yeah.
yeah,
Can
tension
you
and like
imagine us? Can you imagine us like a fire snare, just like selecting the snare and then just like repeating it with no spaces? Like, yeah, dude, your brain would explode.
right, right. Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. So you're talking about, innovating and trying different things and in telling your story, you kind of glossed over real quick, and then drum kits and whatever. But I don't know, maybe people know this or maybe they don't, but you really, I mean, you invented this stuff. You certainly made a lot of this stuff popular as far as drum kits, as far as podcasts, as far as so many things that I take for granted, sometimes of like, oh yeah, this is just what we do. We're producers, that you really kind of came up with that. So I'm curious, so far we've kind of been talking about more kind of the music side and the placements. How did that entrepreneurial side of things, that idea of let me innovate and do things that people haven't done, how did that come about?
So in 2007, I I was that kid. I was that like blog rap kid, right? Like going to Two Dope Boys to get my music, and I don't know if you're watching this, you guys lived through that phase, but in between 2007 and 2011, that was sort of the blog rap phase. That was the beginning of your Wiz Khalifas and your I mean, there's so many. I mean, Cool Kids, you know what I mean? Two Dope Boys, Not Right, all that thing. And so that kind of opened my mind or my world up to this idea of connection and connecting with creative people. And back then, there weren't too many outlets to allow for music producers to do that. So that was around the time where I was doing like beat battles, like in 2000, I think it was 2007. I did a beat battle called Red Bull Big Tune. And that coupled with some of the other beat showcases I was doing at the time. Shout out to Beat Society. Beat Society was one of the first live music producer showcases um, in existence. I think they started in 2003, and I did a handful of those. And so doing these events, being around creative people, I always wanted to um, sort of be a catalyst for that. It really implanted this thing in my mind of like, wow, like being around other creative people is super fun. So what can I do? What can I bring to the table to contribute to the creative community? And so the first thing, a lot of people don't know this. The OG Illmind fans know this, but most people don't. The first producery type of thing I ever did was in 2008. I put together an event, and it was called Blap, right? It was a mixtape release for this mixtape that I put together called Blap's Rhymes and Life, and it was volume one. It was just like this compilation of music that I produced for like independent artists, and then I threw a party in Jersey City, New Jersey, right? And I put the party together. So I got Crooks and Castles um, to to sponsor the event. We had free gear from Crooks and Castles. This was when Crooks and Castles were like the apex of like like underground streetwear. You know what I mean? And it also helps that they're the Filipino homies, so we gotta stick together. So they sent me a bunch of gear for the party, and then I had Miss Info, who was at Hot 97 at the time. She hosted the party, and it was a crazy party, and I had these swag bags with Metro cards in them. So we were like, okay, come to New Jersey and come to this party. It's gonna be lit. This is 2008, and the first 100 people who pull up get free gear from Crooks and Castles. You get a Metro card so you can take the train back to New York, because 95% of the people that came to the party were from New York. And I don't know if you know this now, but like back then, especially, like People in New York, if you lived in New York, you're not going to New Jersey. Like no one's come to New Jersey at night. Like people who live in Jersey come to New York for the nightlife. Like people are
Right.
not from New York are not coming to New Jersey. So somehow I figured out a way to get these tastemakers and these music fans and producers to come to Jersey and have a party with me. And it ended up being the craziest thing ever. It was like we had like 3,000 people on the RSVP list. Capacity was 300. We reached capacity with a line that was around the block. It literally looked like one of like the fucking craziest club night ever, but it was just a bunch of kids. We're all kids. We're rocking J's and we're listening to Little Brother and fucking 50 Cent and like we want to get our free Cricks and Castles gear. So I did that event and that was literally the beginning stage of me having the confidence to know that I can put something together and do something. So then 2011 was when I put my first drum kit out. There was also the year that I started these live producer showcases called BLAP. Obviously, BLAP back then stood for Beats, Love, Alcohol, Party. So it was kind of like this different hybrid of the word. So I was doing those every month at this venue called Katra in New York City. Shout to you if you're watching this and you went to one of them. They were super lit. That was 2010, 2011. 2011, put my first drum kit out. I'm like, you know what? Let me just go for this and see if there's producers that would want this, right? Again, something that I know could help the producer industry potentially. And then 2012 was when I started my podcast called, back then it was called Blap on the Radio. Shout to the godfather of podcasts, Combat Jack, Reggioso, rest in peace. He put the battery in my back to start a podcast back then when before people knew what a podcast was essentially. So I started that, did a new episode. I think I did a new episode every 2 weeks.
What
Did
was
that, and
your
then that started.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Well, with the
Yeah,
intention, God, I have like a bunch of questions. Okay, so with the intent, what was
yeah.
the intention of the podcast when you started it? Like, what were you thinking?
I
What would
love
it serve? What purpose would it serve?
I loved the idea of having a platform to just talk about whatever I wanted to talk about. And I knew going into it that it would be my chance to just talk nerdy producer shit. And that's really what it was in the beginning. It was
Nice.
like, well, like it's 2011, 2012. Where am I going to go to like hear someone talk about like how to make your snare crunchier by using transient designer. Like no, there was like back then there was like relatively zero content on the internet or podcasting talking about that stuff. So I wanted to just start it. Like, you know what? Like there's no resource out here, so let me just start my own. So that was kind of
Mm.
my whole philosophy with all this stuff that I started to do over the years
I
was
was gonna say, and the drum kits, was that the same? Or how did you come up with that?
yeah, so when I started making beats, I used to get all my drums from Jay Dilla. I used to rip them literally from Jay Dilla beats, and I would like take the snare, isolate it, and use that. And then the traditional like drum breaks from records. I was a big record collector back then, but it was that. And then so in 2011, I was like, well, if someone released a compilation of Jay Dilla drums straight from his stash, I would literally pay $1,000 for that because that's gold to me, right? So then in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm at this point where I have some fans, right? Some fans I know ill mind. Maybe if I make an Illmind drum kit of all the drums that I made, right? Maybe that could be of use to some kid who looks at me like I look at Jay Dilla potentially. And I did it, and I was like, you know what? Like, what would I pay? What's like a cheap price that I would pay, and where I would receive more than I think I would receive? And I was like, I'm going to put more than 100, like 121 shots for $20. Back then I made it for $20, and then I created a PayPal button on my blog site. And really didn't think anything of it. I'm like, you know what? Black Kid Volume 1, let me get my boy Naturel to do the artwork. I'll put it out. Maybe 5 people will buy it, but whatever, it's cool. And then I woke up the next morning and I had, a couple $1,000s in my PayPal account. And I was like, holy shit, like there's people that want this. So I was replying to every email. I didn't have a digital delivery service back then.
Oh, okay. So you're just
So I,
manually sending each one out.
Gmail. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
putting the little check mark on all the customers, and then
Yep.
replying to each one. Yo, blah blah blah. I appreciate you. Here's the download link. Right. I think it was like a Z share like link,
Sure.
and then I was like, here's the download. Boom, and I was doing it manually, and then that evolved to migrating to Shopify in 2012, and I've been on Shopify for pretty much most of my online business stuff has been run through the Shopify backend, and I've been pretty happy with it. So again, just to wrap it up, um, all of my motivation for mostly everything that I do outside of just being a music producer is how can I do a thing that could potentially help someone else who is similar to me and someone who could use this service or product to help them become a better creative person. Whether
Yes.
it's a physical drum kit or a podcast where I might say something and it might spark something in their mind for them to be motivated to do something, or um, you know, uh, the events that I started to do, Pass the Aux, Blab Sessions, they all kind of work from the same um, uh, mantra, where
Hmm.
it's I'm in a position I can help someone through using a product or a service or both. How can I deliver this thing to my demographic and in hopes that it will help them to become a better person? And that's really the premise of everything that I do.
Huge, huge. I think every successful entrepreneur from the beginning of time is basically some version of that, right? Is how can I actually bring value to somebody? How can I find there's this hole in the marketplace. There's nobody else who's creating a podcast that's geeking out about how to, make their snare sound good. There's nobody else who's a successful producer who's actually themselves put together a drum kit, and that's something that I would love. So now I'm going to put that into the community. Nobody else is putting together this type of event, so I'm going to do it. To me, that is like the audacity of an entrepreneur to be like, you know what, this doesn't exist in the way that I want it to yet, or maybe it does, but I could do it better, or I can put my own twist on it. And so, man, I'm grateful for you that you were somebody who did that, because you created that opportunity now, not only for everybody who got to download that kit and make dope beats, but for all the entrepreneurs after you too, who said, oh my God, there's this opportunity here, and now it's its own huge industry. So I just think that that's kind of the gem that I think people can take away there, is just look at, well, what's something that you would want, or what's something that your audience would want, and maybe it's not there, or it could be better, it could be different. And that seems to be the key. Is that about right for you?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And you go into these things knowing that you're a lot of times, I'm not saying this is every time for me, but a lot of times you start a new thing and you realize that you're the you're the guy on top of the mountain, right? Yelling and screaming, saying, "Hey, like check out this thing." And the first reaction is, "Yo, you're crazy." Like you're by yourself on top of this mountain hollering and screaming. I remember Hove said this in a Breakfast Club interview years ago about Ye, and that always stuck with me too. But this idea of, you know, trying something with it potentially tanking and then owning it. Oh, we as entrepreneurs, like we own our wins, but we also own our losses too. We have to be able to wear that on our medal of badges. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so when you do a new thing, there's this chance for it not working. But when it does work, you also have to be okay with other people seeing what you did. It worked, so let me take this thing and create my own version, and then maybe it'll work for me. And when you think about that at first, it's like, okay, well, like I don't want to pioneer something and then someone steal my idea. I used to feel animosity towards that, but then I realized like that's just increasing the probability of other people benefiting off of this like thing that I tried. So it doesn't have to all come from me, right? Like
Yeah,
there's 7 billion people on
huge.
earth, and there's so much abundance and so many people and so many opportunities to go around, that when you look at the world at such a bigger scale in that way, you really start to be thankful of what you can do. And then you realize like, oh, like everyone's just trying to get it. And, you know, as long as there's good intention behind it and whatever they're doing is great, as long as they're not like blatantly ripping your shit off, like
Yep.
that's a whole nother conversation. We don't talk about that.
Sure.
But as long as they're not doing that, then you played your part, I think. So it's a win-win for
Yeah.
everyone.
No, I love that mindset. It's the whole mindset of sharing, of let's do this together instead of I'm gonna hoard my information, my drums, my whatever. Instead, it's like, no, I'm gonna put this out into the world. Let's see what we can all do together better and level up together. I mean, I know that's for me, even just more on the, let's say, entrepreneurial side of as far as selling beats, right? And really, and I got the game from Anno Domini, so credit to him. But then I started doing it, and then I just saw so many people copying. And at first, I was like, man, what is this? Like, this is so annoying. And then, just like you said, I looked at it like, you know what? Actually, I get where they're coming from. I'm glad that they're getting something from this. And then that turned into, you know what? Let's instead of being upset about this, let's teach them literally every single detail about how we're doing this. And now that's turned into an even bigger, more valuable movement to me than what I was doing before. So it actually created a way bigger opportunity. And now it's so dope. We've got other producers who are creating their own launches and funnels and things that we were doing, that now we've got this sort of ecosystem of we can refer each other people. And it's just way more beneficial to everybody than if we just hoarded it for ourselves and didn't put it out there that way. So that copying
Listen,
sometimes is the beginning of something beautiful.
listen, what you guys have done for that community is incredible. And um, you guys have literally pioneered this thing. I mean, look, listen, I recently started a funnel, and guess where I'm referencing my shit? You guys, you know what I mean? So
I,
like,
I may
what
have
you guys
noticed your funnel is looking a little familiar.
yeah,
I
yeah,
love it though. I
exactly.
love it.
Dude, it's amazing what you guys are doing. And the reason why you guys are doing are seeing so much success is because you're not just an influencer, um, teaching people how to do a thing that you've never done, right? The key to it is that you guys did it first. You did it for yourself, and then you're showing other people how you did it. So that boggles my mind too. It's like I don't understand the idea of like teaching someone how to do something that you never did. Like if I never rode a bike before, how am I going to teach someone how to ride a bike?
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of my only sort of like feeling that I think is like trash about what we do is you're going to have like this percentage of people that are going to do that, which is definitely a shame. I get it, uh, the hustle, right? But I just never have been a co-signer of that whole, teaching someone how to do something that you never did yet. And I think it's highly
Agree.
valuable, or so much more valuable to show someone something when you have actual like physical experience in doing it. I just think that's common sense, right?
100%, 100%. And I think, even to give those people a little empathy, I think probably they're looking at Illmind, maybe they're looking at me and they're like, well, I want to do that. I want to teach too. It's
Sure.
like, cool. But I think sometimes people, like, I'm all for modeling and seeing the path, but I think sometimes people are here and they see somebody who's here and they think, oh, let me do the things that somebody's here. And it's like, no, you first do all the things that got them to there, then you'll be ready to be there. Now you can teach. Now you can, but you have to take those steps in between. And sometimes people see what you're doing now, and
Yeah.
and that's not actually what they should be doing yet. Like, let's like
Yeah.
aspire to that. Let's take the steps to get there. Does
Yeah.
that make
And
sense?
I definitely like feel empathy as well, because it's like, you know, people have free will to do what they want. But then there's this really interesting idea of like, let's say LeBron, right? LeBron James, he's debatably the greatest basketball player in our time right now, right? So you hire LeBron James to teach you how to shoot a free throw, right? This guy has shot hundreds of thousands of free throws, maybe a million free throws his whole life since he was a kid. He's the guy that's most likely going to be trustworthy enough to teach you how to shoot a free throw, right? But then you have a kid or a person who watches LeBron, right, take free throws and chooses to teach someone how to shoot free throws based on watching LeBron shoot free throws. And LeBron's free throw shooting course costs $100. The kid who watched LeBron is also releasing a course and charging $100. Okay. Now, the kid who watched LeBron says, I'm allowed to do this because I watched you do it and I want to make some money. And I feel like I'm a good speaker and I feel like I'm a good teacher. I'm going to teach this thing. And it might work. It might work. But what this kid is saying to LeBron is, hey, Bron, those 30 years that you fucking sacrificed to get to the point to where you are a real basketball player, I'm going to shit on you and say, you know what, those 30 years was cool, but I'm going to do it my way. And I'm going to prove to you that I don't have to spend 30 years on that court to do this.
Yeah, it's a problem.
There's that perspective too. There's that
Yeah,
perspective too. And look, if you could pull it off, the kid who said that to LeBron, if you can pull that off, kudos to you. Kudos to you.
sure.
You deserve it, right? But at the end of the day, it's kind of like a moot point. It's like what are we talking about, right?
Yeah.
So I just think it's super interesting.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. So talking about this kind of stuff, like especially now we're talking about, courses, and I definitely want to get to the course that you got coming up because I'm super, super excited for that. But I have a question about how you think about your position in the community and the way it affects your decisions. And here's what I mean. I know for me, for a bunch of years, I was selling beats to rappers and singers. And so my decisions were based off of how can I serve that audience? How can I build that business? And now I have, because of being on Blapchat and being on Producer Grind, and just in this last year, really, and going into that space more, I have a certain amount of influence. I'm not IllMind, but I've got, there's people who are checking what I'm doing, and so now when I'm making decisions for what I'm going to do for Legion Beats, it's always in my head, how is this going to affect producers? So like, for example, we've got this contest going right now. You can win a verse from Snoop, and we set this whole thing up, super cool. But I was really hesitant to do it at all in the first place because I was worried that a producer is going to look at that and go, oh, okay, so the only way I can be successful is if I have the resources or money to get somebody like Snoop. And it's like, no, that's not true. I was able to do it without that, but right now that is a resource I have available to me. So anyways, I guess my question is, does that come into your mind when you're making decisions about what you want to do with your business, of how that might affect the producers who are watching you and how that might affect what they think is possible or what they should be doing? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Where it's like I'm afraid to do things because I guess like what we talked about earlier, where now I'm in a position to where I can do certain things, but sometimes I'm almost afraid to do them because I want people to understand, well, you might not have to or want to do this yet. You got to take these steps first.
Right.
So I'm wondering does that come into your decision making at all, or you're like, whatever, I'm doing what I'm doing. They'll figure it
Got
out as, you know?
got you. So you might not like my answer. I am super, 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 super selfish when it comes to prioritizing um, the joy of something. And if something feels good and it feels joyful and it feels like something I want to do, that supersedes my potential assumptions of if I might lose people by doing it, right? And there's really not many, if any, like controversial things that I do, right? But I always um, prioritize my instinct first before I try to um, allow for sort of the outside world to dictate my next move or dictate whatever it is I do. Like, there's definitely an argument for both. Like, when I released my drum kit in 2011, that was relatively risky because I ran the risk of a community of people saying, "Oh, Illmind's no longer a real producer. He's like a beat, like a drum kit selling guy." Right? Or Illmind is a sellout for whatever. I hate that name, but like, or that word, but it's like he's a sellout and he's trying to make money, blah blah blah. So there's always going to be that demographic of people that are going to have like a negative thing to say about it. And over the years, I learned that you're just always going to have those people that are going to say stuff. So for every five people who say Illmind is corny for having a podcast, there's 15 people on the left who say Illmind is awesome for having a podcast. I'm subscribing. This is great. And at the end of the day, both of these groups of people are growing and they're both always going to exist. But I choose to focus on serving the people that want to be there. It's this that's also what I learned about Twitch is since I started my Twitch channel in April or May of beginning of COVID, I realized that it wasn't about getting 10,000 people at a time on my stream. It's about getting the few hundred in my stream who want to be there. I'd rather have
Yeah.
300, 400, 250 people in there at a time who want to be there, who are engaging, who are seeing and feeling value in what I'm doing, as opposed to 5,000 people in my stream where 4,500 of them are just trolls and just fuck around and are bored and just don't really want to be there and don't really give a fuck about what they're watching. You guys can leave. Go to a different platform for that. That's not what I'm here for. So that is like a lesson that I learned this year was like, yo, just focus on the people that want to be there, continue to serve them, and the people who don't, maybe you can convert them later. But if you don't convert them, that's okay. There's 7.5 billion people on Earth. You'll be fine.
I love that.
So
I love
yeah,
that. So it sounds like if I'm understanding correctly, it's really do the like what we talked about at the beginning, do the things that bring you joy, that are exciting, that are innovating to you, and ultimately the right people are going to come along and eventually they'll understand the nuance of it. Hopefully of maybe that's not the thing I should be doing right now, but I'm going to be inspired by it because man, look at the level he's going to, and I'm not going to worry about the short term how that might be perceived.
sure, exactly. And also too, to add on to that too, another really I think uh, overlooked thing, and I'm sure you experience this too, is when you have an idea and you have something that pops up and you're like super excited about it. It's so important to take action immediately, because if you
Mm.
don't and you wait till tomorrow or next week, like there's almost 100% chance that you'll end up never doing it, because you just kind of over time, it's like a human nature thing. It's like you lose the excitement for a particular thing over time, and then it just becomes this like fleeting moment of inspiration that never actually manifests. So I'm a real big believer in execution immediately if it's something that feels right.
Love it. No, it makes sense. You
Yeah.
there's something magical again about that initial spark of creativity, of excitement that if you sit on it too long, you kind of lose that. So
Yeah.
man, let's get in. So we've been talking about course and stuff. I really want to know. I noticed so Mind of a Wolf, right? That's the course that's about to drop.
Yep.
And is that your first course that you've done?
Yes. This is my
Because that's
very, very,
that's
it's
interesting to me because you've been the first as a producer for so many things, and it must have been a conscious decision at this point to wait till now to create a course. So why now?
so for a long time I've gotten hit up, about like, Ilman, when are you going to write a book, or when are you going to do this? And, there were a few times where I was like, man, maybe I should like start the process of maybe putting a rough, template together for a book idea. And the course to me is something, and when I announced it a few weeks ago, this is what I said about it, but the course allows for me to take all of the things that I've done in the past 18 years and all of the conversations, all the podcast, conversations I've had with upcoming creative people, to being in the studio with super successful people that are a lot richer than I am, and learning and taking all of these conversations and then taking my own experiences in the past 18 years and simplifying a philosophy into this sort of like ball um, of practice, to where if you consume this course the way it was designed, the way that I designed it, it will help to shift your trajectory and optimize your performance to for you to be able to get to where you want to go, right? So it's less of a, hey, here's a course of like X, Y, and Z of everything that I did. Just follow what I did and you'll be fine. It's 100% not that. It's a course that I've made to that's essentially more of like a mental sort of optimization, where a lot of it involves um, self reflection, self love, belief, love, action, and positivity. That's BLAP. You know what I mean? So that's sort of the mantra of it, and I'm super proud of it. I've been working for months on this thing, a shitload of record. You know how it is, recording, and then editing, and then shooting, and all this stuff. So I put super, 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 super amount of love and work into it, and I'm super excited about it, man. Like, I feel like it's time, after all of the podcast episodes and launching my new Friday podcast and being on Twitch. I'm seeing all of this um, value that I'm able to bring, and I'm super thankful for it. And so I said, you know what? Now is the time to do it. It's 2020. We're going into a new year. People are working from home. People are really starting to realize that they could put attention into their passion and their craft. So I just think that it couldn't have come at a better time for people. And so I decided to just, go full fledged and say, let's put this thing out and launch it. So it's dropping on Black Friday, November 27th, mindofawolf.com. Let me just say too, while we're here, the
Yeah.
first the first 10 people who sign up get this limited edition trucker hat.
Hey.
Super fly. I gotta send you one, Gabe. But
Hell
it's
yeah.
charcoal gray, official snapback, one
Super dope.
size fits all, and it's all designed by me, and it's got the yellow print on it, Mind of a Wolf. So first 10 people who sign up get one of these trucker
Super
hats.
dope. What
So yeah, man.
what time and where if they want to get one of them hats?
All right, so mindofawolf.com, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Thursday night.
Okay.
That basically midnight going into Black Friday.
Okay.
Go to mindofwolf.com. Right now, it's just, you can put your email in there, the join the waitlist email. Thanks to you guys, ClickFunnels. So we're doing an email capture for the early waitlist, and then
Cool.
all my waitlist people are going to get information in the next 2 days, or actually tomorrow, and you can maybe get it. So yeah, mindofawolf.com. Go there. It'll be available at midnight Eastern on Friday, the 27th of November. If you're watching this and it already happened, then go to mindofawolf.com right now and get the course.
Super dope. Super dope. Yeah. So can we geek out a little bit about the process of
Oh, yeah.
that? So yeah, so I, me, I love to geek out about the marketing side of things. So I think, one gem right there for everybody is creating that urgency, that scarcity at the beginning of the launch of, hey, if you're one of the first 10, you're going to get this super dope limited edition thing. Get on the early access list, build that tension, build that excitement for it. What else has been the process for you? Obviously hopping on this podcast and getting the word out there. What's that process been for you to get people excited about that new launch?
I'm not gonna lie. I just wing it. I just wing it.
Yeah.
It's a combination of knowing that I could, knowing that I have enough of an audience to be able to talk about certain things on these different platforms. Like I'll tease it on my Twitch. I'll talk about it on my Instagram. I'll talk about it with you. I'll talk about it with some other people, YouTube, blah blah blah. And that's kind of like the easy sort of approach. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not really doing anything super complicated in terms of like being super strategic about building tension. Maybe I should, but I'm not really like super like putting a lot of energy into that kind of stuff. Um, but I think like even with my drum kit drops and the auction stuff, it's really just more so, how can I get it to the people who are already paying attention, as you like to say, the warm audience. But then eventually you'll probably see a cold audience ad on Facebook for this course at some point. And don't be surprised if you recognize some of the templates in there. So, like
I'm
I
sure.
said,
I'm
you guys
sure.
are amazing. You guys really set it up for us. But anyway, yeah, like just stuff like that. The typical shit.
Yeah, no, for sure. If I can give you one little thing that was super helpful. So we just dropped a pack, a beat pack about what was it? A little over a week ago, and we did an early access list. We did email, but we did SMS, we did text, and
Text, yeah,
bro, that made a huge difference. I know we're recording this on a Tuesday, and you're dropping
yeah,
it. Like I would add that SMS field in there because, dude, we had about 3,000 people on the email list. Half of those were on the SMS list. We did the same kind of thing where, hey, if you buy in the first 24 hours, so we had that early urgency, bro. We sent out that email, but really that text at 10 a.m. last Sunday. For a $47 beat pack that we were selling, bro. We did $10,000 in 10 minutes off that because
yeah,
of that. That tension, that excitement. But the SMS, I'm telling you, bro, was huge. So if you're able to add that in now, I'd highly recommend it. Just because
yeah.
it pops up on the phone and bam.
Yeah, SMS. I remember doing the SMS stuff when I had Superphone.
Yeah.
Back in it was 2014 was the last time I like went hard, and that shit was crazy, bro. I don't know why I stopped doing it, but I should definitely start. You're right. But
Yeah.
I also have the push notification
Oh, yeah, on the
stuff
app,
that I'm
right?
doing on my app too. Yeah. So I'm gonna play around with like all that stuff. But you're right, man. The SMS stuff, like it just seems like it just works.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where email, I love email. Email is not dead. It still works, but there's something magic about you send out a push notification through an app or an SMS where it just bam, it pops up on the phone. Everybody sees it as opposed to like, they'll eventually open their email hopefully and kind of get to it. So that was just one little gem
Exactly.
that because I just did this kind of launch and it was man, that made a big difference for me for sure.
Hell
Um
yeah.
Man, what else? What else? We got the I know we only got a minute
We
here,
talk
but
about
I
the
did.
auction.
Yeah, bro, that is something that once again, just something that's innovating. And I think a lot of times the best ideas are the ones where you look at it and it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But you didn't do it first. Illmind did it first. So what was the genesis of that and how's that going?
Okay, I'll tell you 1 second.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny actually, when I first started selling beats online, one of my first ideas was, oh, it'd be dope. It's almost like an eBay for beats for selling exclusive licenses for
Yep.
beats. So it's just one of those things where, oh yeah, I thought of it, but I never followed through. I never got to it. So it was
Again,
crazy to see.
another one of those like you get excited and then you let it go. It's like fuck. You should still do that though, dude. Like the
Yeah,
the, the auction beat thing. I'm surprised no one has set that up. Like whoever
I know.
does, and it's gonna go. But yeah. So auction pack. I sold my first sample pack, and I decided to do it as an auction where it was a one of one. And I don't know, man. The idea just came from the whole conversation that we've been having as of late in the community of, royalty free versus master clearance, and then the idea of like, oh well, like if 5,000 people have a sample pack, then like it's technically like maybe not as special if I use one of the loops because so many other people have it, and what happens if I get a placement? So it gets all messy. So this was another one of those moments where I'm like, I'm just gonna go for it, and if this tanks, then this is just another thing that I learned from. So I had this idea. I said, you know what? I'm gonna put together IllMind sample loops, 10 loops, including stems. It's gonna be a one of one digital download. Only one person will have these, and only one person, two people in the world have heard these loops. IllMind and the person who wins the bid for the auction. And I think I was inspired by it by watching this documentary on Netflix. I forget the name of it, but it was like one of those like Banksy, uh, uh, documentaries. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna do this and see what happens. Let the people decide what they feel is the value for like a 10 pack of Illmind loops. And I did it at first. I did on eBay. So I'm like, let me just sign up for an eBay account. I got my account. Let me put it up there. And the pack ended up selling. I put it up for bid for 7 days, and it ended up selling for a little under $7,000 for the one of
Crazy.
one. And then I released another one on my own platform that I built, a bidding platform, and that pack ended up closing at what was it? I think it was $8,000. So I'm like, okay, this is just something that could potentially work. And so right now I am selling my third pack. Okay, it's called Orion, and again another pivot. You can bid on the pack directly on blapkits.com. So I was able to code a an auction option in my actual website. So you can just go to blapkits.com. You'll see the pack Orion, and it's up for bid right now. Bidding ends on December 4th. The winner will receive a 10 pack of Illmind loops. With stems, and they're going to get a whole bunch of other stuff. I might as well show you right now.
Yeah,
Um,
see it.
the pack is going to be delivered to the winner in this limited edition Orion box,
Dope.
right? And then we open it up, and it's going to have the USB inside of it, right? It's going to come with a Orion wall flag, a limited edition Orion T-shirt, and it's going to come with the Tops Orion Tops one of
That's
one
awesome.
card, collector card. Not PSA graded. I'm sorry, because PSA takes forever if I want to grade this thing. Signed by me with the date, Black Friday. So that's going to be in the box as well. And then one more thing, you're also going to get, and the last auction winner for the other sample pack received one of these as well. You're going to get this one of one congratulatory plaque here that says Orion on the bottom. It's got my digital signature, and it's a little congratulations. And then on the back, I'm going to physically sign the back as well. So you can hang that up, and it's kind of a collector's item. So again, yeah, like
So dope.
I'm having a lot of fun with this stuff. Like I'm super excited on where this one goes. So bidding ends on December 4th. Only one person will own it. I think for me, the next step is incorporating NFTs, NFT, crypto, all that stuff, one of one digital files. Like that's kind of like my next thing in my brain. So we'll see where it goes.
I love it. So dope, man. I got a million questions for you about that. You got to hop back on the podcast, man. We got to have you back
Oh
on.
yeah, dude, anytime. Just let me, I mean, we ain't doing shit. We're here. I got the fucking lights. I got the mic. We're good. You let me
I
know.
love it. I love it, man. Always innovating, bro. I just appreciate you because you really have created so many opportunities for me and literally hundreds of thousands of other producers. Just with the stuff that you have innovated and continue to innovate and continue to do and inspire. So thank you, man. Thank you for that. Thank you for taking the time today to hang out. Maybe we could just wrap it up with where people can find you and anything else you'd want to wrap up with.
Yes, yes. You can find me on all social media platforms at LLMIND Producer. Follow my Twitch account. I'm streaming every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, making beats. We go hard. We're building a community there. Super fun. Twitch.tv/ LLMIND Producer. Download my app, LLMIND Connect. So Google Play or iPhone, doesn't matter. Just go to the App Store, type in LLMIND Connect, download my app. It's free. I'm going to be sending push notifications with discounts, new products, updates on the bidding, on the auction packs, information on the course, signing up for the early wait list, all that good stuff. So the app is where you want to be. So download the app, Illmind Connect, and Black Friday. I don't know. I mean, Gabe, I don't know when you're dropping this, but Friday the 27th. Are you dropping this before
We're
then,
we're gonna
or
get it out as quick as possible. So hopefully
okay?
before Friday. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So if you're watching this, Friday, uh, Black Friday, November 27th, midnight, brand new Black Kit dropping on blackkits.com. We got the course, Mind of the Wolf. Go to mindofthewolf.com for the course, sign up for that. And we're going to have a good time, man. I'm super excited to just be doing all this new stuff. And shout to Midi Money, Gabe, you're the man, Legion, the whole squad. You guys are innovating as well on so many different levels. And it's just good to be here, active and doing it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time.
Of course, we'll talk soon. I'll catch you on the podcast.
All right, man.